Welcome to Curator Conversations. It's a monthly series where we ask a local curator or arts organizer to pick an artist that they enjoy chatting with. And tonight I'm super thrilled that we have Vincent Uribe and Hope Wang. And I'm so excited to see the both of you, especially in the
Hi.
same frame. So exciting. I'll do some quick bios and then I'll pass it off to the two of them. Vincent Uribe is an artist and creative community builder based in Chicago. Uh, a Los Angeles native, Vincent has a dual degree graduate from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. He is a founding director of Level 3, an artist run exhibition space and online publication launched in 2010. Through Level 3, Vincent has organized hundreds of exhibitions featuring exceptional emerging and mid career artists, both nationally and internationally, including Miami, New York, and Mexico City. In 2013, Vincent joined the team at Arts of Life to help expand opportunities to artists with disabilities. Through the Artist Enterprise Program, he launched at Arts of Life an in-studio Circle Contemporary Galleries, expanded Arts of Life public exhibitions locally in Chicago and on a national scale. His work includes shows with the Chicago Cultural Center, Art on the Mart, Intuit Center for Art, Outsider Art, and the Ukrainian Institute of Modern Art, among many others. Vincent serves as a founding board member of Equity Arts. He has participated in numerous talks dedicated to artists' professional development, and his work has been featured in publications such as the Chicago Tribune and New City. Vincent, it's so nice to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope Wang is a Chicago-based artist, arts facilitator, and poet, contending with sloppy traces of human activity around sites of industrial labor and transit. Her work explores the fallibility of memory in contemporary conditions of alienation. She also hosts and operates LMRM, a floor loom rental resource in Chicago for Chicago fiber artists. Wang received a BFA in 2018 from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and is a 2021 recipient of the Curator Art Accelerator Program Grant. She's attended the Digital Weaving Lab Residency at Praxis Fiber Workshop, the Weaving Mill WARP Residency, and Spudnik Press Cooperative Fellowship. Her work has been exhibited at Ignition Project Space in Chicago, Gallery No One, Chicago Art Department, the Sullivan Galleries, and Zhou B Art Center, among others. Thank you, Hope, as well, for being here this evening. Everyone, don't forget that we do have a chat function, so feel free to pop any questions, comments that you might have for Hope or Vincent in there. And with that, that is all from me, and I will hand it over to you all. Thanks again.
Hey.
Thank you, Dia.
Hi. So thanks for inviting us to do this. I'm really glad I get to connect with Hope. Also in person, and we're in Hope's studio right now. I wanted to keep this pretty casual and fun and conversational. So I think Hope and I are going to kind of ask each other some questions, try to get to know a little bit more about what both of us have been up to, what we're doing, what we like and dislike. But I also welcome, this group if anyone wants to throw in questions throughout, interrupt us, and ask questions if it's something that we could clarify or expand on. I'm open to people unmuting themselves and jumping into. I like a very casual conversation presentation. So I was thinking we'll just kind of start off by, we'll kind of take turns asking each other some questions, but thanks for doing that introduction for us. But maybe if you could expand a little bit more and just tell us who you are and what you do, Hope.
Yeah, I guess I'm calling myself a full-time artist right now. I think partly because of the pandemic, I all my streams of income sort of became one during the past year. So I've really just all of my time and energy has been really focused on my studio practice in the past year and a half. So that's really been how I think that's really encapsulated my experience for this past year, especially. So I'm just really in the studio all the time, and I moved into this new studio space at on a contemporary.
So we're in Hope's studio right now. You see a lot of looms over there. See a lot of Hope's work behind us. Great backdrop.
Yeah, so I focused really on just setting up this new space. It's shared with two other people, two other artists who we really are like interested in this shared space and like this collaborative energy in creating a fiber studio that where we can bring other people in now that we are sort of re-emerging from COVID. And hopefully it can be the space where I'm providing some access to a floor loom that wasn't really as accessible to people as before, and then also maybe being able to create some sort of like community where people can come in and get to meet other fiber artists. So that's part of like my practice as well, is really trying to connect more people. And yeah, I think that like that's really how I would talk about what I've been doing the past year and a half or a few years since I graduated from SAIC, is really trying to think about my place as an artist in Chicago, and also like how to create my own sense of community as a young emerging or like early career artist.
Well,
how would you describe yourself?
I do a few different things. As Dia mentioned, I work at Arts of Life as my day job. We support artists with disabilities there, and we have exhibition programming and professional development programming at Arts of Life, which is a really wonderful organization that I've been a part of for the past almost 9 years, a little over 8 years. The organization is 21 years old, and we're really looking forward to continuing to build the community in and around Chicago, and really continue to build our connections really specifically also within the arts community. But I think community is something that is, you know, as Hope mentioned, in the weaving and loom realm, community is something that's really important to me. And so bringing people together is kind of how I see my practice as a curator, as an artist, as a connector of people. And that's also how I know Hope as well. So I run Level 3, which is a gallery in Wicker Park in Chicago. It's an online publication as well. Hope worked with me as an intern and then a gallery assistant, and was a really strong member of our team. And we've stayed in touch since. We've also shown Hope's work at Level 3. Hope came to mind because I think maybe it was mentioned, Hope also just was awarded the Generator Arts Grant and got a really nice check from them that I was lucky enough to be on the jury for, and got to advocate for Hope in that realm. And so, yeah, I think the more ways that I could, you know, help artists find their path and support their careers is something that I'm really interested in, how to connect them with other people. So it's really nice to be able to connect with you in this new setting after you just got back from a month-long residency.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us what you did at that residency or about the residency?
Yeah, so I was in Cleveland, Ohio for the month of May. I was a resident at Praxis Fiber Workshop. They are a fiber studio that recently acquired a TC2 Jacquard loom in the past year, and they set up a digital weaving residency program. So I was the third resident for their program, and I got to have 1 month of independent, like unlimited time on this digital weaving machine that allowed me to make work that I haven't been able to make in 3 years since I left my art school. And all the work that's kind of in the backdrop right now, that's all completely new, like made last month. I spent like 27 days there and was weaving 23 of those days. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now, is that I just like made a ton of work that I need to spend the next few months processing and talking about. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with post-residency.
So I was in the fibers department for a while when I was at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I'm not as familiar with the process of weaving, and kind of, I know it's a very laborious process and it's a very like time sensitive process, and like, I don't know if I always have the patience for stuff like that. I was more about the heat press and screen printing and like wanted immediate stuff, but I'm wondering if you could inform us a little bit about the technology that you're using, or like the weaving process, and how do you get, because like you were weaving for basically a month straight. How does that process work for you? Like, do you start with an idea? Can you just go for it? Do you really have to plan these things out? What does that look like in terms of the weaving process?
Yeah, for sure. So for those who aren't familiar with a jacquard loom, specifically the TC2 loom, the way that it works is that it's a computer-assisted loom. So there's a computer attached to it, and that apparatus allows for this loom to read files that are coded with weave drafts. And it's really hard to even explain even without showing. It's just like really complicated, but basically you can code like a Photoshop file with traditional weave structures, and then the software is able to translate the like ways that you've coded the file. So maybe you think of it like pixels. So every thread is kind of like a pixel.
But you're still having to do
You're
some of it.
Standing in front of the loom. That part is like the weaving part is still very analog, very manual, but the loom is able to provide these like more immediate structures or designs. So it's kind of I can answer, I would say yes to all the questions that you had about like, does it have to be super planned out, or can it be really spontaneous? And yes, because you can create a file and play around with it as long as the structures make sense for the software. Like you can just put it on immediately. For me, I'm also a huge planner. Like I like knowing what my whole year looks like. So for my weavings, actually, when I found out that I was going to be at this residency in February, I immediately just started making lists in my sketchbook. So every piece on here is kind of a line in my sketchbook that I had already written out before I landed at the residency space. And then of course, like while I was there, I did get to like experiment and spend more time and maybe do another iteration of something. So I was able to sort of make some immediate decisions, spontaneous choices there on the loom, but also some of the basic structure of how I was working was definitely very planned out before I got there.
Yeah, and it seems like you could do, I mean, you have a variety of kind of different formats, more abstract, some representational, like photo-based stuff. So does that digital process, is that what makes that possible in terms of the imagery that you could weave?
Yeah, I would say so. So I think that my work on a traditional floor loom tends to be more abstract, and then what I can do on the jacquard loom can be it gives me a broader range. So I can do some that are really representational.
And these are floor looms, yes. So I'll give you a quick. These are like big floor looms that are in Hope's studio.
Yeah, so I get to play around with how I can play with abstraction, but also the representational aspect. And I think that the jacquard loom specifically allows me to do this like representational technique called trompe-l'oeil. So making the viewer, playing around with the pushing the limits of representation and kind of tricking the viewer into thinking that what they're seeing is something completely different. So how can I use the loom to create something that looks like plastic or a window reflection or asphalt? So that's what I really enjoy playing with on the loom in terms of imagery and what that process and that equipment can provide for me, as opposed to something else like painting or photography.
Yeah, the asphalt looks really interesting because you have that stark contrast between the yellow. This is like an example, I think, in this corner. It's the yellow lines and black, but there's some texture to it too. There was a question, do you use any off-loom techniques? Like planting?
Like plating or basketry? No, not currently. I think a lot of the work, at least that I recently did, was really some of my like classic techniques of using satin structures. So I have not gotten around to really being a little bit more playful with the other techniques yet.
And materials, is it?
Yeah, it's a combination of wool and cotton. I like to play with like the way that yarns reflect light. So the wool tends to be more flat, and then the cottons I go for like mercerized cotton. So when you're walking in space to see this work, it has a little bit more dimensionality. So like the cotton might reflect light, and then the wool won't necessarily do that. So that's something that I find like very enjoyable in terms of playing with how the materials can also warp your sense of what you're looking at.
Cool. Yeah, feel free if there's other questions that come up. We'll keep an eye on the chat as well. Let's see, we have a handful of pre-planned questions.
Well, I wanted to sort of circle back and ask, so like for those who are joining us, like, yeah, I met Vincent when I was an intern, and that was like at year 5. I remember celebrating like
the 5-year anniversary,
like
okay.
the 6-year anniversary.
Yeah.
And so that's like half of how old the
book
is.
And
I feel like I haven't been part of the back end of things since then. So I just come to like the events and stuff. And I guess like I'm curious like how things have sort of changed for you, or like how you see the direction of like how like level 3's participation in the general art scene since then, since like
so you were, that's interesting, because you were part of the level 3 team, I think maybe right before or right as I was starting to work at Arts of Life. I don't know if I was working in there at the time. I was probably just starting. So that was an interesting time, because I went to the School of the Arts too, was going to school full time, working, but also running level 3 and living behind the gallery as a live workspace, and like trying to juggle all these things and just sort of making it work. And my life was the art, my art was the life, and it all kind of blended into one. And then a friend sent me a link. I was sort of doing a lot of assisting jobs, assisting artists, working in the admissions department at SAC, and I came across Arts of Life on accident. And I was kind of blown away that this studio existed just down the street from me, across the street from many other studios and friends that I would like bike past all the time, and I had never heard of Arts of Life. And so I was sort of flabbergasted that I had never heard of this organization, walked in and was immediately blown away by the artwork in the studio, and just got really pulled into the organization and the mission. And I think I struggled for the first year when I started working for Arts of Life full time and trying to also transition to figure out how to not be a student anymore, but also still run level 3 as an artist run space, and what those boundaries were, and feeling like I had to create boundaries between like work, life, play, like what are all these things that make up my day to day. And I think it wasn't until like a year went by that I realized like it's all one. And I think I put up some barriers initially where I felt like I needed to like separate everything. And when I realized like they all feed into each other, I show artists and pull in artists at level 3 into Arts of Life. I pull Arts of Life artists into level 3. I pull multiple artists into other opportunities that I didn't need those barriers anymore. And so once I accepted that I didn't need to separate that out, I think everything became a lot clearer, and that it was okay for these things to bleed over and cross over to one another. And I think ever since that realization happened, it's all just kind of been piling up in a good way, where I'm sort of always doing something. But yeah, I really like that sort of mushiness and that like mixture. Like we were installing a show today at level 3 that opens up this weekend, but like you know, I also share pedestals between the different art spaces that I run, and like it all kind of works together.
Yeah.
So level 3 is the gallery space that I run in Wicker Park, Chicago. We've been around since 2010. We're a artist-run space, so we focus on doing small group shows of local Chicago-based artists and intermixing them with artists from the larger art community. So both locally and nationally and internationally, with the hope of building that community. So community is really important. We generally focus on doing small 2 or 3 person group shows and having those pairing artists together that didn't previously know each other. And then one thing that I think sometimes people don't realize is that our curatorial program actually stems from our online publication series that we have. So we have a weekly publication series on our website where we feature artists every week. There's a short artist, if you go to the website that's in the chat, there's a Artist of the Week series where we feature different artists, and it's like a 10 questions, somewhat standardized interview format. And it's our way of doing studio visits with folks that we can't do studio visits with every day or across the country or across the world. And so everybody that we do an interview with becomes part of our archive, and that becomes our roster of artists that we curate shows from. So this weekend, there's a 3-person show opening up that all 3 of the artists we've interviewed in the past. And so that's kind of how our curatorial process works. And I think makes us a little bit different because we rely on that interview series, and it's really about the relationships that we're hoping to build with folks.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, I really resonate, I think, with what you were saying about like bringing in sort of mushing everything, all your interests together. I mean, I've been like working as a creative a lot like less time in Chicago, but I feel like that's kind of been how the past few years have been for me as well, is like really thinking about what excites me and also like what I care about, and how those all sort of inform each other. I know that some people like to keep things separate, and that really like keeps them going, where for me I'm just like, as long as it all makes sense and like I can like all this energy is sort of like, even if it's like in different spaces, I'm wearing different hats a lot of times, it feels like it all still feels interrelated. So I really like, I think that's like where I find myself as well. It's like, I'm so busy, and I think a lot of people have asked like through the pandemic, like, oh, like how are you staying so productive? And I like don't really like the idea that like you need to like hear someone's secrets on how to be productive. It's like, if you don't have that energy or you don't feel inclined to be making work, that's absolutely okay. But I think though, because of just the way that I've navigated how I manage feeling purpose or like energy around, in the energy in my life is like, oh, suddenly all these things inform each other, and even when I want to break, something else comes up and I'm like, okay, excited, like let's do that too. Like they just generate on their own opportunities, I guess.
Yeah, and yeah, I think I do know a lot of people who do make that separation, and I think that was my model that I was looking at for a while, that like all these things, you know, you have your art practice and your career practice and your money making and like all these things, and when I just realized like, no, they're all the same for me. Like, and I feel lucky and privileged to be able to like have a day job that I love and could consider it something I'm passionate about, but also be able to support artists both outside of my day job and within it, and both, you know, within level 3 Arts of Life, and how they kind of like work to support each other, really.
Yeah, and it's also really hard to maintain that, like, and figure out that balance. Like,
work-life balance is definitely hard, and I'm not a great example of boundaries and saying no to things.
Well, I say this a lot, but like I think sometimes people will ask like, what are your hobbies? And I'm like, I don't have any.
Yeah.
I don't have hobbies.
Work? Is work a hobby? I don't know.
And I think for non-creative people, they're just like, but you're a creative person, like wouldn't hobbies for be part of your life. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
it's work, and I just care a lot about it.
Yeah, maybe my hobbies are going to the club and dancing.
Yeah.
Can I consider that a hobby?
I consider that rest.
That's actually more rest than a hobby. That's church. Good point.
Well, John Paul, hi. You asked, can you talk about the work in relationship to the trompe-l'oeil or the simulacra? Is it one or the other? Is it both? I'm so glad you got to see a little bit of the work.
Do another little tour.
Yeah, this is only like half of the stuff that I made.
This is like, how long would one of these take you while you're like?
It really depends because size isn't
Size matters.
Indicator of like the length of time, because I think it's more on like sometimes the structure is really complicated. So like for example, this took a lot longer than the one next to it, even if they're the same size.
Gotcha.
Just because
more intricate.
Producing it in that particular way, especially because I would consider this piece like really the trompe-l'oeil type of work that I enjoy doing through the loom and kind of can only achieve through the jacquard loom. I can't do it through anything else. And I think that's what's so important, is that like, because I've had such limited access to the loom, like I have asked myself, can I do this? Can I achieve this through other means, through other processes? And it doesn't. For me, I've decided that doesn't read the same, is because I guess I'm hoping that this kind of answers your question, John Paul, is that I think that in order to trying to push it so that it looks like there's plastic sheeting, that the white yarns of the warp can sort of make it a little hazy, so it looks like you're looking at something that has a reflection. Trying to make sure that you can see me holding my phone up in the reflection, and then weaving this like woven frame to sort of like really push this graphic edge that has the depth of like something that's going on, and then it really takes you out as like this moment of that's really graphic. And to me, I feel like producing that through the digital weaving space, that's not something that people who are looking at it are expecting. I think that the novelty of seeing something that you think is one thing and then approaching it and seeing that it's all thread, that's not really, I think, that shift or that glitch, a realization of like, oh, reality might be, like this reality is not what it seems, is not necessarily a thing that happens with photography or with like, you know, photorealistic drawing or painting. I think that the history of trompe-l'oeil is really readily acceptable through painting or through drawing, but I don't feel like it's as like it's more unexpected when it's cloth. At least that's been the reception that I've had, and I think that's why it's important for me that it's partly like it's drawing on this sense of reality or this expectation that I think that even upon approaching it, people are like, I still don't understand what I'm looking at. And I think I've been starting to think about like the work's relationship to reality a little bit more in some of the newer work that I've been making, that I've also combining with print. Is like, there's some images that you see in space that in the architectural landscape that you wouldn't think really twice about until some of it is recontextualized. So I think that, I guess I see them doing one or the other and sometimes both, because like this past year, we've seen a lot more shuttered spaces, window storefronts that have brown paper taped up to it or plastic sheeting. And that's a signifier in space that we see a lot more often that still don't really necessarily think about until I think sometimes like when people see this work, they're like, oh yeah, like I realize that that's been something that I've been seeing all the time now. Even though this was actually this like series of work or this like body of, or this like particular way of seeing things has been something that I was looking at back in 2017. So it was pre-pandemic, and it's been interesting to see the reception after like this past year, having a lot more people getting like seeing plywood, boarded up windows, and these like storefronts that are taped up.
And these are images you're taking, right?
They're images I'm taking, and then I edit them and try to like really translate them into cloth, and give them a different kind of life, because I think in that way that I'm also sort of creating a different kind of conversation. And it's interesting to see how that's changed in terms of the context of like the world around us. So I think that the meaning for the people who are seeing it has been informed by what people are seeing in the world. So that's been, yeah, I would say, I feel like I think that they're both.
Do you feel like photography is part of your practice, or is it just more of a tool for your practice?
Absolutely. I think that I consider, like in my art statement, I talk about using hand weaving, printmaking, photography, and painting. And I mean, I do have like categorically painting work in my portfolio, and I think that I have a photography practice, and I don't do fine art photography printing,
right?
And I don't display that work, but I do think that all of that, it's like a multi-layered experience that leads to the objects that I'm making. Gotcha. So when people have asked like, is it painting or is it photography? I'm like, it really could be. It could be all of it. I think it's all of them for me. Like I photograph things in my daily life. I notice them because they have painterly gestures. And then the final form in which I display them ends up not always being like that category that people understand rigidly. But I think that I approach them with all of those.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit of a thing that I've noticed, like, I don't know if it's specifically the fibers department at SAC or just like SAC, but coming out of there, I think I was kind of, like when I was in school also, I think I took one painting class and it was like a painting seminar, but I would say I made paintings, but I wouldn't use paint. And so it was like, all these things are mushy that just like our professional or daily lives are, that like these mediums maybe don't necessarily have to be one thing or the other, and that they can all live amongst each other and just be what they are.
Yeah, I think having gone through SAIC, like we do have this understanding of things being multidisciplinary, or just the lines being blurred between those rigid boxes of what they are. And I think in the past, and being outside of SAIC, people do often ask like, what category do we put you in? Or like, and often I think that comes up when people are asking about prices too.
Oh yeah.
Especially when it comes to textiles, they're like, it's not painting.
Yeah, it's not a rug. It's not a home good necessarily.
So, yeah, I think it's been frustrating, but also interesting to navigate when people are like, okay, so what box does this fit into? And I'm like, I don't think about it like that at all.
Right. Yeah.
I think the same with also like our professions. It's like, so what do you do? What are you? Like,
do all these things.
I'm like, what are you asking about? How I make money?
Right. Yeah. Get to the point. I have a day job that pays the bills.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we should go into a set of just like some rapid, maybe we do like 20 questions and just come up. I will try to keep count of 20 questions, and we could just take turns asking. Maybe we ask and then both answer? Or,
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll start off, and I'm gonna try to keep tally somehow. So I'm gonna ask you, and we'll just try to like bang these out. Where's the next trip that you're going outside of Chicago?
I am actually leaving next week to go to Yellowstone with my family. So.
Cool. I will potentially be going to Cleveland TBD next weekend.
Will you ask this top 3 emojis used on your phone?
Oh, that's my top 3 right now are, I use this guy who always has his hands on his head.
Yeah.
And then I use the guy who has his hand on his face. And then I use this guy a lot too.
Yeah, I agree. I also use the guy that has this. I use the smiling devil.
Oh, that's a
and then
good one.
also the smiling crying face.
Uh-huh.
I feel like that really captures my life in general. Like.
All right. What's your like go-to dessert?
Tiramisu.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
All right.
It depends on the year. I think I've had like
really
dessert of the year, but right now I think
you're into tiramisu.
I mean,
right
I
now.
used to live in like West Pilsen, right next to a lot of Italian restaurants, heart of Chicago. The tiramisu there is really good.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I'm generally like cakes. I like cakes.
Yeah.
If I could get a cake, I will eat a cake.
That is a pretty good.
That's pretty broad, but I like cakey things.
Yeah. Well, in the topic of food, signature dish.
Oh, let's see. Recently, I'm gonna shout out my air fryer. I like using the air fryer for multiple dishes, but I think most recently, what I've been using the air fryer for are like, I guess, fresh vegetables from the garden. Now that like our garden is starting to like have things like zucchinis and things, so I like using the air fryer for cooking right now. What about you?
I think I'm gonna go off of what I made often when I was at my residency last month, and it would be tangzu paigu. So it's translated to like black vinegar pork ribs.
Oh.
My parents are from like southern China. It's like a province right next to Sichuan, and everything is sour and spicy.
Oh,
so vinegar and pretty much everything. So it's just like pork ribs marinated in like sugar, vinegar, star anise, and ginger.
Wow.
And you just make a huge batch of it, and then you can reuse the stock for more. So it's a great like.
And so do you do it on the stovetop or in the oven?
Stovetop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to have you make that sometime.
Yeah. It's my dinner party go-to party trick.
Good to know. All right. My question is going to be, what was the last podcast or book that you listened to or read?
Last audiobook would be Memorial by Brian Washington. I highly recommend the audiobook. It's actually narrated by two people. So Brian Washington narrates one person, and then another person narrates the other one. And it's just like a really beautiful sort of conversational look at like through mundane aspects of this couple's life, about like through like looking at class and family trauma, and also like different racial politics within their own relationship. And I think A24 picked it up, and they're going to make it into a TV series.
Oh, wow. Cool. That's great. I'm going to have to check that out. I don't do a lot of book reading, but I did read, I guess this is a year ago, so it's been a while since I read a book. I really liked reading, oh God, why am I blanking on the name? Disability, no, that's not what it's called. Hold on now, I'm gonna have to look it up. It's by Alice Wang.
Oh, is it disability? Visibility?
Yes, I was gonna say invisibility. No, it's visibility. Yes, Disability Visibility by Alice Wang. A bunch of short stories from folks with disabilities. A few of them I know, so it was nice to kind of see some familiar faces or names, I guess. So that was the last book I read.
I'm going to go back to one of these questions that you provided. What is the most tedious thing you do right now that you wish you didn't have to do?
Oh, God. That's funny. I feel like I wrote some of these questions without thinking through my own answers for them. I will say tedious things I do that I don't like to doing are submitting receipts. I have to buy a lot of things art supplies and things for events, and I think I'm the worst person on my team and make it really hard for my team to keep up with my spending because I have to report on all the spending, and I do the most spending and keeping up with it is hard.
You don't want to like clean it up.
I don't want to clean it up. Can I just spend the money?
Truly.
So I need to get better at that.
Yeah. I think my tedious thing would also be money related. I think right now the tedious thing is selling art. Not that I do it very much because it's tedious and I don't like to, so I don't try to put myself out there. But I think recently, as I've seen like my career progress a little bit more, people have asked or like people have invited me for like online gallery representation, and they're like, create this profile, price your work. Talk to people, and I'm like, I hate pricing my work. I hate talking, like hoping that someone will buy it. So I think that's like something that I find very tedious at the moment.
Yeah, but all of Hope's work is for sale, and she's also ready to sell
Buy
it.
my work.
Yeah, you can also buy the work. And if Hope needs help, I will help sell that work.
I like did not ever think I would have to sign up for marketing, but
Oh
I
yeah,
have to do my own marketing for that. So
yeah.
retail is not my thing. I like spending money. I don't like asking people to spend money on me.
Fair. Do you have, what's your like do you have a signature look or article of clothing that you like to, I feel like, I don't know, the pandemic has like changed that for me. So we could say now or in general, what's your like go-to?
I have an immediate answer, and it's asymmetrical skirts. I mean, that's kind of what I'm wearing right now.
Asymmetrical skirts. And who's this skirt by?
It's by this Malaysian designer, Kisi Gan. She like works a lot with patterns and layers and a lot of asymmetry, and it's great. And pretty much my entire closet the past few years, I've just been acquiring versions of culottes and asymmetrical skirts.
I'm gonna throw your @ in here.
Miss the E.
Oh yeah, thanks.
What about you? What's your?
I think it's been a lot. Well, COVID has made elastic waistbands one of my favorite things. So I will go with elastic waistbands, generally pants with elastic waistbands, or like ties that I could put on. I think coming and emerging back into society and public and realizing like I could see people again, and I'm like trying to rethink through some of the, I have a big closet, and starting to like get dressed again has started to feel a little daunting. So
yeah, I know. I think I really feel you on the stretchy stuff, because I'm like, that's why with the skirts you can just hide a lot of things in it. You can put your hands in there and
great,
you feel like you're just a blob. Anyway, I think we should turn it back to the audience or whoever. Like,
oh yeah, we have 10 minutes.
Ask us questions now that we've asked each other plenty.
Yeah, if anyone has any other questions and you want to ask, we're open to answering anything you're curious about. I will say anything goes, maybe.
Anything goes until it doesn't.
Yeah, until we decide to overlook that one. But we'll keep going unless other questions come up. I'm wondering if you have any advice to maybe yourself, like say 2 years ago, what advice would you have given yourself, knowing where you are now?
I think that, ooh, that's tough. I think.
Or even as like a student, like what would you have told yourself as a student?
I think that as a student, because I had a lot of anxiety about this right before graduating, I was like, what am I gonna do? I like spent all this time working so hard in art school to make what I thought was good work, that I didn't think about like what I wanted from my life, career-wise or outside of school. And I was just like really going like feeling like the anxiety through the roof, thinking about like, what if I don't do anything art related or creative, or like, what if I don't know what if I don't have goals? I don't know what to work toward now that I'm not in school. And I did try my best to prepare for that by like checking in with myself really regularly, and that was really important. I also set the boundary of like, don't think about or talk about art for a year. So I'm burnt out and I don't want to like force anything. And I think like my advice to myself back then would be like, it's like your goals are always going to keep changing. And if they do change, it's absolutely okay, because if you know that needle shifts, it's because you really like intended. There's other things that you can be really intentional about, and like those things will align. And like if you don't figure out your goals for until like right before it hits you, like it's absolutely okay. And I think like, yeah, having just what I think I've like had a lot of different jobs, and I didn't keep them for very long because every time I had like hit my like misery threshold, like this was the worst job I ever worked, which was the first job that I worked out of school, and I stuck through it really for way too long. And then after that I was like, okay, now I've like adjusted my threshold, and now I know better like what works for me and what makes me miserable. And I think that like only through that process, at least for me, did I really land at a place where I'm like, okay, now I can actually see the next 5 years. And like, I don't think that I would have, and that was like not through pressuring myself to have goals. It was just like, oh, like every time I do something now, I'm like assessing like, how do I feel about it? Is it something that I could see myself like, does it take a lot more energy from me than it does like give me energy? So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I would probably say something similar. Like, I think the thing for me was I've always told myself I'm gonna do stuff until I don't want to, till it's no longer fun, or like it's no longer interesting. And I feel fortunate to like always have had like, knock on wood, I think I've never had like a job or a position that I despised or like I hated. And so I think
that's awesome.
Yeah, I guess I feel really, I mean, maybe it's because like I'm interested in so many things, and like I get sucked into like so many things. I did tell myself when I remember it's been a handful of years since I graduated, but I do remember telling myself I couldn't go into the service industry or retail because I would like it too much, and I would just do that. And I like gave myself a strict limit of like, don't do that because I will like it too much and I won't ever leave. And so I feel lucky to like always have had jobs and roles that have kept me in the creative community and working specifically with artists. And I didn't know what I was going to do either. And I think kind of just doing the things that you want to do led me to where I'm at now. And I think that was an important thing. And that's why things can be mushy now, because I'm not going out with this sort of set agenda of like, oh, I have to do this, this, and this. Like, I'm just doing the things that are enjoyable now. There's a question that came in of, are we working on anything together right now or the future? And how would you describe the potential for artists in Chicago right now? I think that's a great question. I feel like we just came out of working out of something together a little bit. And I mean, Hope applied to a grant that I sat on the jury for and got to advocate for Hope. We didn't work specifically together on that, but we were both working on the same thing, kind of. I got to do a studio visit with Hope and some others, and now you're reaping the benefits of that. Like, I don't know, there's mentorship involved in that, and some money. I don't know if you want to expand on that at all.
Yeah, so I recently received a grant from the Generator Program. They're based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I think this is the third year that they're doing it. But they offer for artists $15,000 unrestricted.
And only one of those artists is a Milwaukee-based artist. Or sorry, non-Wisconsin-based artist. So there was only one non-Wisconsin, and that was you.
Yeah, and not only does it come with the grant money, it also comes with a 12-week mentorship program. So they're, I think, an accelerator program that really wanted to think about like what community of entrepreneurs was underserved or like didn't have as much support in terms of like navigating their like a sustainable practice. So I think I have nothing but really great things to say about this program so far, which I think sometimes can be really like it's not a thing that I don't always have a lot of positive things to say about a lot of other programs. And I think it's just been really great for us to get mentorship from them about a lot of like different aspects of our practice and business. Yeah, cool.
And then I think potential for artists in Chicago.
I feel like you might have a better pulse on that.
Yeah, I guess I'm really excited about, I'm always excited about Chicago. I feel like a big advocate for Chicago artists, and I'm always bragging about, I'm originally from Los Angeles, but I've been in Chicago almost 13 years, and I'm always trying to get people to visit, see why Chicago is so great, especially for the artist community. Here, I think is super supportive of one another. People can be really experimental. There's space to do things, start spaces, and like it's a very welcoming place to join a community. And I think that's what I like so much about Chicago. But also now that like it's summer, I think there's so many like fun shows and things coming up, and people are ready to like really get out and see work and support each other again. And yeah, I feel like having sort of felt like I've been locked up for a year and a half and just doing things virtually, that I'm really ready to see work in person.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have talked about Chicago as the place for like that's really nurturing for a lot of artists, and I think that there's a lot of room for artists to do very different things in other cities, but I think that the overwhelming like sort of consensus is that there's an affordability, and then there's also like a lot of support from people in Chicago for things for like DIY project spaces or like interesting like wacky like research trajectories for people. And I think that's really important actually to like fail often, and I think Chicago provides an opportunity for people to like navigate what success means for them, and to like start something and maybe not see it the way that they envisioned it, but then like learn something new from it. And I think that there's, I guess like it feels like there's less like dire consequences in that sense, and there's like a lot more room for things to like for new things to come out of those like explorations and experimentations.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have really great schools that foster artists coming to Chicago and I think that's a big, that's a big sector of the art community. But I think it's also just really nice that I feel like there's always people coming in and I don't know, maybe offering a fresh perspective, and then I also just appreciate people who have been here for a while and are dedicated to growing the community here. And it's not just like get in and get out, that like there's a community of spaces and artists and administrators that want to foster the local art community and trying to make it more accessible to folks who are not a part of that. I think level 3 in Arts of Life, I always want to invite people. You don't have to have an art school background to come in and enjoy an exhibition or to try to buy artwork. Like, art should be accessible. And I think that's one of the things I'm hoping will come out of the pandemic a little bit more, is like, instead of just kind of going to IKEA or going to Target and buying, you know, a pre-framed print, like, go to a local gallery in your neighborhood, go and support an organization that is supporting local artists, and you could get a better story, you could get a better relationship with that art. And so I think there is so that I feel is actually really accessible in Chicago, and just making that known and aware to people that, like, buying artwork and approaching artists or going to galleries and like being a part of a community that you might not be a part of doesn't need to be scary and like isolating. And I think it is a little bit more in places like New York and Los Angeles, where it's a little bit more like dog eat dog and like status oriented. And I think I really like that Chicago is a little bit more approachable in that sense, and wanting to support that and appreciating people who do support that, I think is really special here.
I think that
we're right on time. I don't know if you need to say anything else, Adia, but I guess thanks, Hope, for joining. Thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah, thank you both so much. As you were talking about, you know, how welcoming the arts community is here in Chicago, I can't help but think of the two of you as well, who are just so active and instrumental in being phenomenal advocates and just incredible folks to have in this ecosystem and community. So thank you both so much for the conversation tonight. It was so exciting to hear more about your work, Hope, and also Vincent, about your practice as well. Thank you both again, and for everyone.
Yeah, we have a show at Level 3 this weekend, so if anyone's in Chicago, Saturday and Sunday, we're open 1 to 5 and 1 to 6. So
absolutely. Cool. So get on over to Level 3. Thank you for joining us this evening. Here at 21C, we are open, free, and to the public 24/7. So come on by. Our next curator conversation will be in person, July 20th. So give us a follow, stay connected with both Hope and Vincent, Level 3, with 21C, and be on the lookout for more amazing information about the arts in Chicago. Thank you all so much again.
Thanks. See y'all.
Good one.